Kamala, hey, already? Really? Come on, like...
Do I have to figure out my whole future before lunch, or is there, like...
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Untitled Marvel Project. I'm your host, Tanner Dexter, joined here by my two comics-defying co-hosts, Tucker Hazel and Abram Buhner. Today, we're doing a series review of the newest Marvel Disney Plus series, Ms. Marvel. Tucker, hold that shit up. Oh, here we go.
Here's my Ms. Marvel Volume 1 Omnibus.
Yep, we'll be burning this thing right here because we hate comics and we hate you. Just kidding. We love you, the viewer, and you love us. And if you want to show your love for us, you should subscribe to Backlog Banter. You should join the Discord. That link is in the description there. You can talk about Ms. Marvel. You can talk about how much you love and or hate Ms. Marvel, or your indifference to it, if you're somewhere in the middle. You should like this video. You should ring-a-ding-ding-dong that bell to let you be known of all the new BLB videos that come across your YouTube recommended page.
Leave a comment.
Yeah.
Leave a comment as well. Leave a comment about your thoughts on Ms. Marvel, or your thoughts on our thoughts on Ms. Marvel. And we might respond with our thoughts on your thoughts on our thoughts on Ms. Marvel.
Shoo-wee.
But before we get too lost in the weeds, But before we get too lost in the weeds here, I want to throw it over to the resident Ms. Marvel fan for his initial thoughts on the series. Tucker Hazel.
Yeah, we reviewed episode 1 when it came out. This is my most anticipated Marvel project probably since Endgame because I own the Ms. Marvel Omnibus. She is my favorite superhero and has been for a number of years. And I was really curious to see how they would adapt this comic because of how much controversy that had been pre-release about the show, about the changes that had been made. Her powers not being the same, her origin not being the same. What are they going to do with Inhumans? I was very curious, but I'm happy to report that this show absolutely nails what it goes for. And I think that in terms of adapting a comic with its tone and its characters and its styling and being something super fresh for the MCU in its characters and its portrayal of a new culture and having this huge cast of characters, all of which I absolutely adore, this is probably one of the best parts of Phase 4. And I think that, I don't think it's a hot take. Iman Vellani as Kamala Khan, one of the best new parts of Phase 4 so far. And I think this is just such a great start to something that I think will be huge going in the future seasons of this. Kamala being a part of whatever team she is going in the future. I love this show. I think it's got a weak middle, maybe. But I think even with that, I care so much about these characters that I can excuse a little bit of weakness in terms of villains and plot and things like that.
Sure. I'll jump in right here and say this is not a backlot banter movie review. This is an Untitled Marvel project. We are doing full spoilers. No warnings, no forewarnings. I guess this is a forewarning technically. But we are doing full spoilers. So go finish the show if you haven't.
Yeah.
Abram Buhner.
Here's my situation with Ms. Marvel, right? I have read a lot of the comic series. I can't confirm or deny whether or not on my personal bookshelf I have my high school library's copies of the first one.
Okay,
sure.
All right.
But I can say...
That would be too incriminating.
Right, but I can
Possibly.
say beyond a shadow of a doubt, 100% in the truth of the matter is I have read a lot of the Ms. Marvel storylines. And I really love it. And so I was really excited about Ms. Marvel as somebody who has seen very few of the Disney Plus shows.
Yeah.
This one... Right. This one and Hawkeye both compelled me for the same reason in that I really love the source material they draw from.
Yeah.
And coming on the other side of Ms. Marvel, I think the show is a mess. I think that the plot really loses its way. I think that it forgets what I think makes the first couple episodes really incredible in terms of their style and the interpersonal stuff. We become Marvel movie nonsense of we got to get the thing and the terraforming and the CGI battles and all of that. I think the show has significant structural issues. But at the same time, it is one of my favorite Marvel projects I ever gotten, actually, because I think that what it has that, frankly, I find some Marvel projects to be lacking these days is a lot of heart. I think there's so much heart in these performances and so much passion there, and a real sense of style that I think, unfortunately, kind of peters off as you get deeper into the show. But even in its lower moments, there's still a lot of charm from the performances to the editing, the music, the sort of in-universe special effects, sort of. Like, there's a lot to love here. I just wish that, actually, something similar to maybe what happened to the MCU Spider-Man movies, I wish we had stayed a little bit smaller and focused on what makes this show so good, which is Kamala Khan is a high schooler, and she's dealing with powers, and she's in this culture that is not allowing of her to be the superhero she wants to be, right? Like, that's when the show's at its best.
Yeah.
Not when we're in, I'm going to say Kamartaj, but that's not right.
Karachi.
And we're in the Red Daggers here, in the calamities.
The
Clandestines.
Clandestines.
The Clementines.
Right. Then the show becomes too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Boys, how fitting that I am seated here between the two of you, because once again, I find myself falling somewhere in between the two axes here, the axes of power, to my left and to my right. Yeah, I think that...
That's what they call us, the Axis powers.
No. No. But we are allied powers here together.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. But yeah, I think Ms. Marvel is a very good show. Probably my second favorite MCU Disney Plus show. And we'll get into we'll delve into all these specifics here that you fellas rattled off. But I think that something we can all agree on here is that Aman Vellani is fantastic. The family
6 thumbs up.
The
Six
family
thumbs
dynamic is fantastic. The friend dynamic is fantastic, and that is where this show shines.
Yes.
When all these people are just together, they're having fun. She's having to hide her superhero identity. She's having to do a training montage with Bruno. All this stuff is fantastic. I do wish it had stayed a bit smaller, Abram.
Yeah.
I agree, but I think there's also something very interesting about, delving into the past of Kamala Khan and like the history of her family and how they're tied to the clandestines. Do I think it's well executed? 50-50 probably.
Yeah.
I think we can get a little lost in the sauce here a little bit, lost in the lore, and miss that energy that kept us going through the friends and the family stuff. But ultimately, yeah, I think this will land highly on my MCU ranking overall.
Likewise.
It absolutely lands highly for me because even though we're talking about all these flaws, I do think they feel like a drop in the bucket when you compare how strong the good things are, how highly the highs go versus how low the lows go. It's not that low compared to other things we've seen. None of it offended me. It's just like occasionally I would find myself tuning out because I don't care about the clandestines. And I liked her being in Karachi, and I liked introducing the Red Daggers, but then we go to a scene that's like, I literally said out loud, time for a lore dump, because that's what happens, and we get a lore dump.
Yeah.
And these things are introduced and peter off in ways that aren't incredibly satisfying, but throughout that, I'm still super engaged because I want to learn about Kamala's family. I like the idea of connecting whatever superhero shenanigans with the newer dimension, the clandestines and all that, and her being a mutant or whatever that runs in her family, to the partition of India and Pakistan and the history there, and her time traveling and connecting to her family, and there's sort of this generational thing with her mother rebelling against her grandmother, and her grandmother like being related to her great grandmother, and like it all ties together, I think, in ways that are interesting at face level, and at face level enough for me to watch Aman Vellani go through these circumstances that are, some of them are kind of boring. They're not exactly the best parts of the show, but I'm invested in her and invested in her family to where I'm like, okay, I will watch this and it won't annoy me.
Yeah. I think that this show is very good at onboarding you for that sort of stuff with Aman Vellani's performance, with the supporting performances of her friends and family.
Yeah, I think here's what I think about it, right? A lot of the problems here are Marvel problems, right? They're not necessarily Miss Marvel problems.
Sure.
And I think that why it might sting a little bit more here is because the rest of the show is so wonderful, right? And its uniqueness and its style and everything. So basically, here's the breakdown, really. I think we would all basically agree on this. The first couple episodes, as we'll talk about, really anchoring on that friendship, the discovery of the powers, right?
Yeah.
That's all great. But then when we get to episode 3, we start to peter a little bit.
Yes.
Because that's when we start to say, okay, what's the threat?
Yeah.
What's happening here? Because it feels like the show can't always be just contented with being in Jersey City and doing this right. And I agree with you, Tucker. I love the actual historical element. I think that's really fascinating. I like that this show feels like it's a little bit more culturally and politically and socially aware than a lot of Marvel stuff.
Yeah.
I want to talk about how it fails that too.
Fair point.
But by the time we reach like episode 4, we really crater down into this zone of, okay, now we need more stakes. We need more characters. We need more CGI battles. We need terraforming and all of this. And what it rings of for me is this general Disney Plus problem of the shows are either feel too long or too short. I saw some people saying that Miss Marvel could have been 4 episodes.
Yeah.
And maybe that would have been fair. Maybe that would have had them rein in some of this stuff, because I agree with you, Tucker. I like the family elements, and that's good, but when it's sort of underpinned by... I can't honestly even really tell you what the Nor Dimension was. I can't really explain who the clandestines were or really what the goal is. And that just feels like it's pulling focus from the stuff I really love.
100%. And I think that the easy way to have fixed that is, and I know this requires a major rewriting in terms of having Kamran and all these characters show up or not show up, but is to make the bad guys of this only damage control. Because damage control, they're not great. They're not the best part, but they work in terms of keeping it close to Jersey City, keeping it close to the cultural disconnect between damage control and the Muslim community, and feeling contained. Yeah. When we're introducing the cosmic time travel elements and interdimensional stuff that is not a part of the Ms. Marvel comics, insofar as it is an adaptation of that, but also don't feel core to her story. That's where I'm like, okay, I can like sort of push aside these elements, and frankly, I don't know how much the clandestines and the Nor Dimension and all that stuff will even come back in the future, because
don't think
I feel like it's just it exists to fuel a plot here and have some CGI battles, most of which don't turn out to be great. But what I will remember is that damage control, while not fantastic, are really interesting in terms of implementation. I'm excited to see what damage control does going forward, because they have set them up in a much more substantial way here, and everything about her Jersey City conflict, I think, is fantastic. Yeah. So even if I would say 1.5 episodes in sort of the middle there are like don't really matter to me. Yeah. It's still elements of each episode. It's what bookends it that I'm still like, okay, I can push aside those negatives.
Sure. Tucker, I was gonna say that exact thing. I think the show would have been much better if we stayed in Jersey City, and I think it suffers from the idea that they need to save this mutant reveal as a reveal, as like oh my god, she's a mutant, and mutants are in the MCU now. She's the first one we've gotten in the MCU. I think that is an issue, quite personally. I feel like if they stuck with that and just swapped out Inhumans and swapped in the mutant thing as her origin story, and I know that there's a lot of people on the internet who are very, very, very mad that they made her a mutant. I don't care. Kevin Feige's not going to touch the Inhumans with a 15-foot pole because that show failed so miserably. That's a thing unto itself. It's fine. She's a mutant now. What is the market material difference ultimately? Yeah. And if she suddenly has powers and she has to come to terms with that, and damage control is hunting her down. She's Nightlight and stuff like that. Fine. That's good. I quite personally. I think that would have been a much more focused and strong narrative, maybe making it 4 episodes as well.
Yeah, to the mutants point, because this has, for some reason, become a major topic of contention.
Yes. Huge topic.
I've got 2 main points to say with this. The first thing, as it relates to Miss Marvel in particular, I didn't even really remember if she was a mutant or an Inhuman, right? Okay, yeah. To be honest with you, I mean, I read this comic 4 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. That's just me having a bad memory. But ultimately, my point there, and I think it's true, the difference between a mutant and an Inhuman is the Terrigenesis. Yes. Mm-hmm. And frankly, that's marginal in the scope of things. In the context of, as I was saying to you guys on our way to see Double Indemnity, because we're fans of culture, was if you came to the MCU for comics accuracy, I don't know what you're still doing here. I mean, Civil War is one of the most interesting comics that I have read, and MCU Civil War has literally nothing to do with it, right? And there's so many examples of that.
It is conflict between heroes. That's it.
It's Quino. Civil War in name only.
Oh my god. Yes. So, it doesn't bother me at all. But I think, Tanner, you're right that it speaks to kind of a weird issue. And what I would love to know, and because I've floated this theory, which feels more true having now seen the episode, of it feels like it was no one's watching the show, hard right hand turn to get a reveal in there to get people talking, because it really is like we're standing on the street and Bruno says like, it looks like you have a mutation. Yeah. And then you hear that for a couple seconds, and then the show keeps moving. Yeah. It feels really throwaway, but that doesn't bother me. I think what's more interesting to talk about than that, frankly, are the new powers, right? Sure. Because I don't know what you guys had to say about the powers initially.
Initially?
Oh yeah, we addressed it in the first episode. I never read the comic. I don't really have any nostalgia or reverence for her for her original stretchy powers. I think it would have been more visually interesting than
Right.
than the hard light creations. But ultimately, at the end of the day, given the CGI budget of this and how CGI looks in this, it probably wouldn't have looked great either.
Yeah.
So for visual fidelity, I think the hard light looks better. But hypothetically, sure, maybe I would have liked the stretchy powers, but it's an MCU interpretation. Is what where I land on it.
My feeling is that, to me, the tradition, because we do get an embiggening moment,
Yes.
nonetheless, but the traditional understanding of Miss Marvel's powers, to me, are really important to sort of like the puberty element and that and everything. So I was definitely annoyed when the trailer came out and that was gone.
Mm-hmm.
Having watched the show, I think it still retains the sort of themes of growing up and everything, to the point where the lack of her traditional powers, to me, wasn't the negative point I thought it was going to be.
Sure.
But I do think that this show looks bad in those fight scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it's distracting, especially when we get to the finale and we've got 2 hard light users.
Yes.
Now I love me some Halo hard light guns, so you show me some shiny, sparkly shit, I'm going to like it. But it gets to a point where there is so much, and this CGI, I think, is so bad that it just becomes distracting. And so, again, this is a Marvel issue. It's not a Miss Marvel issue, because Marvel CGI has been decreasing in quality, and it's even worse on Disney Plus, right?
Yeah.
But it just, to me, it speaks to then why are most of these fights predicated on weirdly out of place colors that just look like they're superimposed into these environments. So to me, the powers didn't really work. They were instead kind of lifted up by the fact that the people attached to them were pretty good.
Yeah, I think that I'm conflicted, not on the fact that I don't like these powers, because I think they're totally fine. I think they're a good representation of what she does in the comics. She's not shooting lasers and stuff. She's still using big hands and stretching her legs and stuff with this hard light version. And the expansion of her powers to include making shields and making little platforms she can hop on, I think allows her to be a little more dynamic. And the purple and blue sparkles and stuff of the armor that she's making and the platform she's making, I think add a nice pop to the color set of Ms. Marvel, especially when combined with that amazing costume that she ends up with.
Very good translation of the costume.
Yeah,
very good.
But I don't think that they bother me at all in terms of how accurate they are to the comics. I think her story, with her growing up and feeling uncomfortable with herself and having a cultural conflict between her parents and the rest of Jersey City and stuff, it's all there.
Yeah.
It's all there in the dialogue, in the conflict between the characters. So not having her stretch, I don't think changes much about the character for me. Yeah. Even as my favorite superhero of all time. I think that the CGI is interesting for me because I don't think that the actual CGI of the arms and the platforms and the shields and stuff is that bad. I think it's totally fine, but it's when she's moving around, and that is not Iman Vellani. That is a CGI wobbly person jumping between these things, and oop. I'm like, now that's where I feel the budget mostly. I think that I think that switching to the purple sparkles and the hard light was a good decision for the CGI, because I think it absolutely would have looked way worse. If she was if her powers were her stretching her legs and her arms, the entire CGI would have been her looking rubbery and doing these weird things. As it stands, it can be Iman Vellani standing there bracing, and they CGI a shield in front, and it doesn't look amazing, but at least you have her emotions and stuff like that going into that.
Coming across.
Exactly. Instead of her feeling like a giant rubbery thing that is poorly CGI'd. I think that really would have killed any emotional weight that these fight scenes have. Not that they have a huge amount of emotional weight, but you're still able to get performances out of these. But I do think that giving Kamran powers at the end and having the end battle be CGI nonsense absolutely does not work for this show. But I do think that is balanced out for me with and just sort of talking about the last episode, how it ends. I like the last episode a lot because I think that her working alongside her friends in the school, making that plan with the bikes and the hoodies and the softballs and all that's great. It's very ground level. She's barely using her powers at all. That's awesome. And then we get a 7-minute fight that's CGI nonsense. Whatever, but she does have some good moments of saving the crowd when she catches the bus, and all the members of her community showing up and cheering her on and taking down damage control. That I think all supports a CGI horseshit battle enough to where I can boop, delete the CGI horse shit element from my mind and be like, no, still a very good ending for all the storylines of this, of recreating the tone and styling of those first few episodes as they're planning this defensive maneuver. That still all brings it up a huge amount at the end after 1 or 2 episodes where I'm like, I don't really know how this is going to tie together. And they do, they make episode 5 feel like the end of the superhero horseshit CGI nonsense. She battles the clandestines. It's time travel.
They turn into
crazy
skeletons.
Shit. They turn into terrible CGI skeletons. But then we have a whole other episode of her returning back to Jersey City and reconnecting with her friends and family and building the relationships back with her family now that they know that she's a superhero. And all of that absolutely ends it on a high note, even if somewhere in there is green and purple spikes hitting each other for 7 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree, Tucker. I mean, yeah, episode 4 and 5 is where I think a lot of the issues come in when we are, and it's unfortunate because that's when we travel abroad and we're in Karachi. And I think, honestly, I like the car chase in episode 4. I think that's a pretty solid action scene when she's working alongside Red Dagger and Red Dagger Senior or whatever that guy's name is, But yeah, then we have to travel back in time for like 15 minutes of episode 5, and like see her great grandmother live this whole life, which I could understand from a standpoint of we learn that she didn't just abandon her family, but I never really felt that. Like all we knew is that she went missing, and knowing that she was but she betrayed the clandestines in some fashion. I guess add the little something, but you don't need to do 15 minutes.
No, that was.
And then Kamal's just suddenly back out after seeing her grandmother. I do like that she made the Path of Stars like that. I think that's cute. Of course, you can see it coming a little bit, but I think it's cute regardless. And then she's back out, and then we have to do the whole. What's her name? What's the main clandestine? Najima. She's trying to open the portal, then she's like, "Oh, I was wrong. It's too much power, and now I'm a skeleton, but I transferred my powers to my Kamran, and now he's hurt, and he got shot by a drone, and he's got to be helped around by Bruno, and there's a lot going on here, and that is the Marvel action plot, lore, whatever gobbledygook that happened in episode 4 and 5. But when you come around to episode 6, like Tucker said, Kamran is still there. He's got the other hard light powers with the spikier ones, but I feel like he's more an avenue to get to the ultimate character arc of Kamala, which is it's okay to not be normal. There is no normal, essentially. Like, just embrace your powers, let people help you, embrace these things of friends, because he doesn't have any family left because his family died.
Yep.
But friends are just as good in these ways. If they care for you and they will help you out, and go meet my good friend Red Dagger, and we'll set you two up for season 2 and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean that's kind of my thoughts on the whole
second half of the show.
Where the second half of the show is,
But Tanner, segue friends. Let's talk about the friends.
Okay,
Because this is where the show is at its best, really. I love the sort of interplay between Bruno and Nakia and Kamala.
Yes.
I think that's really great. It's a high school friend dynamic. We've seen it many times before, but it's nonetheless fun to see it in the context of the MCU. And what I really like is the ways that they are situated in a larger community, right? And I'm not only talking about the community in the mosque, which I think is really excellent, as I want to talk about, but this sort of
Sheikh Abdullah.
Right.
Yes.
I love all these side characters, but I also love this idea that like superheroes are like a fandom for people. And we've got Zoe here, who's the TikTok star, right?
Yes.
It's a really hip fusion of like our culture and this sort of superimposed superhero culture, and then this Muslim culture. And I like seeing all of that stuff to come together because it's a fresh look at things.
Yeah.
Now, are the TikTok overlays and all of this going to feel weird in a while?
Oh,
sure.
absolutely.
But I think it's a fun time capsule right now. And I think that's part of what makes this show feel so interesting to me.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's what that first half of the show is.
Yeah.
So we got our great summary here for the second half of the show. But I think that I'm not going to go through everything that happened in the first 3 episodes, but I think that's exactly what this show is. I feel like it loses its own identity when it has to turn into the Marvel show and going forward. But when it is just Ms. Marvel and it is her learning about her powers and going to AvengerCon and planning that whole sequence in episode 1.
The break out of the house and like they're jumping their bikes onto the bus or whatever. It's fun.
And combining all that with some of the best use of Phase 4 CGI, which is implemented into the environments and showing that she's daydreaming and she's watching Captain Marvel fly across the Jersey City skyline and imagining what her costume will look like, and the text being superimposed in the environment, whether that's on the street or on the bed or in the stars, and like so creative in its use of CGI in that way, but combined with editing and camera movement that is unlike anything we've seen in the MCU. And then even on top of that, probably the best color usage we've ever seen in the MCU. All these sets are so vibrant, and we're looking at things that are not gray and drab like we're used to seeing in Civil War and all these in Winter Soldier and all these movies. Much more vibrant, much more personality, and then the personas of these characters, and just how wide the cast is and how complete all of them feel. You're getting introduced to Yusuf and Muniba and Amir and Kamala and their family dynamic, and boom, I care about all of them. All phenomenal actors, phenomenal characters, easily the best family dynamic we've ever seen in the MCU. One of the first like brother-sister dynamics, the best like parental dynamic to her, and then how Bruno fits into that, where her family knows Bruno and they're always like talking to him even on his own stuff.
He makes them their own Alexa thing because he's the techie friend and stuff like that. I mean, this is like a high school sort of show slash series or show slash movie narrative here. So we have Bruno and Kamran and. What's Red Dagger's real name?
I don't know.
I don't think they even say, do they?
Yeah, no, they do.
They do. Oh, because his name is short for something or something like that.
Hassan. Right?
No.
Wait,
No, I think that's his father.
Oh, that's it. Oh, that's the father?
Yeah, I don't know.
Or no, that's
doesn't really matter.
That's Kamala's great grandpa.
Are you sure? Because
yes.
they're at the fire pit and they're talking.
I don't remember.
I don't
fine.
know.
Okay.
So
there's a lot of characters.
We set up these three boys as sort of a love sort of quadrangle for Kamala mayhaps, and we'll see where that goes in season 2. But it's all fun. You know, all the cast are having a lot of fun here. I like when Zoe pops up in the last episode. She's just there. Like just add her.
She's funny.
Just add her to the friend group. You know, ultimately.
And this I think is where the show works best as an adaptation of the comics. You're looking at the relationship between Amir and Kamala. You're looking at the way that her parents work and her friend dynamic between Nakia and Bruno and even Zoe, because in the comics she becomes a part of their larger friend group. I'm just so compelled by all of them. And there's such, not exactly one-to-one, but in spirit one-to-one adaptations of these characters that I love and know so much about. I've never felt like a better translation from comic to screen of them feeling comic accurate in their personalities, in their dynamics and stuff like that.
Yeah. I also love that the show is just heartfelt and earnest without having too much of a veneer of like sarcasm and undercutting to it.
There's very little of that.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a scene where Kamala had just gotten back from a date with Kamran, and she dances to a song, and never once is that made fun of. It's just like super heartfelt. They're using the lighting to like indicate when it's like in her dream mode or talking to her parents or whatever.
Yes.
And it's never like, oh, look at silly Kamala. She's dancing. What a dumb little kid. But no, she's happy, and it's genuine.
Yes. And I know a lot of people out there. I know a lot of you people out there. Not you people, but you know who you are. No, there's some out there in the internet ether who are like, oh, the show's cringy, it's cheesy, I can't get behind it. Grow up. I'm just saying, like, I want more stuff like that. The stuff that just embraces its own, silliness and its own heartfelt, its own earnestness and stuff like that. That's what connects with me the most personally. I get really annoyed whenever a show or a movie has to be like, it's a dumb superhero thing. So don't worry. We know it's a dumb superhero thing, and we know that you know it's a dumb superhero thing. So we'll pump the brakes a little bit. Now, all gas. I want all gas, all earnestness. I want a dance sequence in in each episode, in each movie. I want it all, baby.
Yeah, speaking of the dancing, I love the music here, right? I think that one of the things I'm most impressed about the show is just how it looks and feels, right? Yeah. You already talked about these sort of the scrawlings on the walls and the moving everything. I love the intro of the show, for instance, when Tama's little cartoon version of these characters moving around for a web series and everything. That's all great, but I also just love the show's color saturation. It's very deliberate use of costuming that juxtaposes against the background. I think the shots are all framed nicely.
Yeah.
I love the music that's playing under a lot of the show, actually. I think that there's just a great sense of cohesion here, even though there are several directors that worked on this. And I was noticing in the credits. I didn't realize that. I would have said that this is one hand guiding the project, because it does feel that cohesive to me.
Yeah.
Which is really great. And I think that extends to its exploration of culture and everything. I love seeing this world that I'm not part of, and I don't know, and I think that that's really lovely.
Well, you see, like seeing Amir's wedding and stuff
Yeah.
like that. That's a great sequence before we get into the clandestines showing up. That's a fun sequence in itself. Them doing like a fun little choreographed dance and stuff like that to surprise Amir's wife. It's just fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I love when we go to the mosque and we're learning about the politics of the mosque. I think all of that's really fantastic. But it's completely unacceptable that the show doesn't know what's supposed to be Urdu and what's supposed to be Hindi in its own subtitles. I mean, that stuff is completely unacceptable. And at the same time, I think it also shies away a little bit too much from actually exploring some of these themes it puts forward, like this idea that there's this sort of gender imbalance in the mosque.
Yeah.
Nakia comes to be a board member, which I love, but that really only goes somewhere insofar as damage control showing up and she being at the front of holding them off.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we don't even really. There's that great moment where the damage control comes in the first time and are trying to give him shit, and then Rashid is the one who.
Sheikh Abdullah?
Yes.
Yeah.
Uncle Rashid is the
Yeah,
one that's
yeah.
running again. Yeah. Sheikh Abdullah is next time you take your shoes off or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
That doesn't go anywhere. I mean, the show feels like it doesn't really want to explore these things, which I think that it would have been useful to do, especially because our main core cast of characters are affected by these issues and talk about them, but we kind of just posit them and let them be, which combined with this sort of meta subtitle issue is not good.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that the subtitle issue, obviously, we never would have known about if someone who wasn't familiar with these languages hadn't told us. So it doesn't really impact my enjoyment or my engagement with this show on a personal level. But I do think that on a meta level, it's certainly important.
I will just say, not to interrupt you, but to interrupt you anyway.
Yeah.
I think that's why the problem is important.
Sure.
Because it's the sort of thing of most people watching the show aren't going to know this.
They're not gonna know. So
Right.
what does it matter?
Which is unacceptable.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
No. But I think that the fact that the show allows itself to even touch on these themes is an important step in the right direction, and that it even does say things like damage control, profiling the Muslims and saying no, she's a brown, maybe Indian, maybe Pakistani girl. Let's go search every mosque, make sure that we knock down every door. They don't care, and Naki's talking about that she knows the laws that this is against the rules and stuff like that. That combination of politics and culture hasn't really been seen almost at all in the MCU, and it would have been really easy to not show and paint a picture of the Muslim community as just interpersonal conflict without the political stuff of damage control, hacking at their door. And I thought that was handled very well, if not explored fully, but there enough to make it feel like it was a constant presence and that it was a conflict that was impacting this unique community in its own way.
I think that's fair. I think it just comes back to the discussion we had about Thor: Love and Thunder of doing the bare minimum for me when you're Disney is not good enough.
Yeah.
And especially in a show that feels this genuine otherwise, I would have liked them to actually explore and expose people like us and the millions of people who don't understand what's happening in these communities to the actual realities of what the show tries to circumvent in large part.
Yeah. The one thing I will say in terms of culture, quote unquote, and I think this is alongside Spider-Man: Homecoming, easily the best exploration of ground level human MCU
Definitely.
culture we've ever gotten. The way that we expose the fact that Scott Lang has a podcast and that Avengers Con is coming and that people know just a little bit about what happened in
love all
Avengers
that
Endgame.
stuff. Yeah.
And all these characters that we're familiar with, even to the reference of Kingo and Kingo Sr. Being a part of
Kingo!
Bollywood. This, for the first time in the MCU since Homecoming, I would say, feels like a part of the MCU on ground level that has had the history of phases 1 through 3 building up to it. It could not have felt so genuine to watch an Avengers Con happen if we hadn't seen the Avengers and seen each of these movies leading up to this, and then had it. It's like an established part of the world. There's a history here. There's a fandom. There's different elements of people who like superheroes, dislike superheroes. Parents don't really understand why Kamala likes this. It's a reflection of our own reality in terms of fandom, but through the eyes of this is real. And I think that's absolutely fascinating. It's handled so well throughout this show.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't know if I have too much left to add. Do we want to talk about the tease into the Marvels a little bit?
Sure.
Because I think this also ties into the whole. She's a mutant now, but she still has the bangle, and Captain Marvel suddenly they swap places, presumably, leading into next year's the Marvels.
Yeah.
So I've been trying to figure out, and I was hoping for answers in this series of like what the bangle was, where this thing came from. Like, what is there something deeper behind the clandestines? Like, and I was maybe hypothesizing that it was similar to the technology that we got a tease from in Shang-Chi with the 10 rings. But yeah, I was hoping for a little bit more indication there. And honestly, this gives you little to no indication of what Kevin Feige's scheming behind the scenes here for what this is all leading to.
Yeah, I was not that pleased with that post-credit scene. I'm a huge Captain Marvel fan, and one of the things that's so fun about Miss Marvel is starting out as being like Captain Marvel and
like a fangirl,
right?
Yeah.
So being like, we see her in the Carol Danvers costume, and obviously Captain Marvel used to be Miss Marvel, similar identities, right? And so this Kamala is so in love with Carol Danvers. So what I was really hoping for, because we watched the finale late, so I saw Captain
we saw all
Marvel.
the spoilers on Twitter.
All of us were spoiled.
Yeah.
Fully.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh, awesome, we're gonna get a scene where Kamala
meet,
and Carol meet. That's not what it is.
No.
It's a weird it's like
It's like a cowboy switch is what happens essentially. Carol Danvers is now in Kamala's bedroom, and Kamala is presumably out in space somewhere.
Right, which is I mean, ultimately it's a post-credit scene, so I don't care that much. I just would have liked that moment. So otherwise it's like, yep, they sure are going to both be in the Marvels.
Yeah.
And I don't really know what to do with that information because I already had it.
Yeah. I think that I was surprised by the way that it was handled. Not because I thought it was great, but because it wasn't what you were saying you wanted. What you say you wanted, if Carol Danvers returning to Earth, for what reason, and going to Jersey City for what reason, to meet Kamala Khan for what reason. Like, there would have had to been explanation there for that to feel natural and not like, hey, we need to hit this moment because we know it's an important moment for these characters. I think that building to that moment of them meeting in the Marvels will be good, but I can't even tell what happened here because I saw some people online saying they switched bodies. Like, this is because in the comics at the end of one of the first issues of Ms. Marvel, Kamala shapeshifts into Carol Danvers, and that's like an important moment in the comics, and it's possible that that's what happened here. It's possible that that it's actually Carol Danvers there, but then why isn't she like freaking out a little bit more? She's trying to like looking around confused, and then it's not clear. But that does make me excited. It makes me interested. Like, okay, well, no, what is Kamala doing in space? I didn't think she was gonna disappear from Jersey City. And then I was thinking like, okay, well then how is she gonna get tied into the Marvels? This is an easy way to do that. They've swapped bodies. Who the hell knows why? That will be explained. Obviously, it's a hook for me. I want to see how this storyline finishes because no fucking clue what's going on. No fucking clue. Like, I feel like if it had been what we expected, it would have not been very surprising. We'd be like, yeah, that hits the beats we wanted, but it wouldn't have been as big of a hook to wonder what's coming next and be theorizing, which is obviously what they want. They have a plan and it will be explained. So it's actually a good thing for me that it wasn't exactly what I wanted it to be.
I just thought it was dumb. I don't know. It's very subjective, but it's like okay, she's in her room. Then the show's done. You know what I mean? It was like a quarter of a scene.
Yeah, because it didn't go any farther, which certainly I would have wanted it.
It didn't even cut to Kamala wherever Kamala landed.
Sure, absolutely.
Because then it could have been like, oh, okay, so she's here and she's there.
Yeah.
And this is that. Otherwise, it's just like, and Brie Larson's in a room now.
All
With
right.
the costume, I like the costume.
Here's the thing. Here, I'm gonna call a Moonshot right here.
Moonshot. Call a Moonshot,
Then we're gonna
Tanner.
we're getting into scores. This is me
Sure.
predicting some plot points of the Marvels right now. We know basically nothing. We know little to nothing actually. So I think that the movie's gonna open with Carol Danvers is in space. She's doing some adventures. She finds an artifact of some kind. She reaches out to touch it. Swoop! Now we're in different places.
Sure.
But Carol Danvers shows up in Kamala's bedroom and she's like, "I'm on Earth. How did I get here? Who are you? Who are you, Kamala's parents?" I think it'd be fun to throw them in the movie a little
Yeah.
bit.
Oh, I think
Sure.
they absolutely will be.
Yeah, and then she'll probably have to go meet
Monica Rambeau.
Monica Rambeau. Thank you, Tucker. I was gonna say Teyonah Parris, but that's the actress's name.
That's true.
But yeah, she'll meet up with them, and that's how they'll connect. And then they gotta go back. Then they gotta go into space to find Kamala.
Yep.
And then they all meet up, and it'll be a happy, fun time.
Happy fun family. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's probably true.
Yeah, exactly. And but yeah, that's my moonshot. That's my moonshot for what will happen in the Marvels.
I'm very excited for the Marvels.
Me too.
Definitely am too. I think that, boys, brings us to where we're gonna put this on our MCU ranking.
All right, we'll find out right after this. All right, we have tabulated our scores. I'm gonna let these two fellows read out their scores. Just to give them a little speaking time. They haven't had enough in this episode, honestly. But Tucker, Hazel, what did you give Ms. Marvel?
I give Ms. Marvel a 9.2. I think that this is what Phase 4 should be, and obviously is, in my opinion, for a lot of these projects that I've enjoyed a lot, but I think this is almost the peak of Phase 4 so far.
I agree.
I think No Way Home hit a little better in terms of not having too much extraneous stuff, but what this film does right, it does better than almost anything I've seen from comic book adaptations from the MCU. It fixes so many issues we've had with the MCU of having much better supporting cast, having much better use of color and cinematography and creative use of CGI. But then it also has some MCU sticking points, but they're not sticking points that stick out enough for me to knock this down any lower than one of the best things I've seen from Marvel, and absolutely the right direction to go, at least in my opinion.
Aaron Buhner.
Yeah, I think it's in a run and gun battle for not Into the Spider-Verse. What's the Doctor Strange movie called? Multiverse of Madness.
Yes.
It's between Multiverse of Madness and this for my favorite thing in Phase 4. But I think I'd probably give this the edge, honestly, because this really is to me what I want more from Marvel. It's the style, as you're saying, but it's that self-contained nature, right?
Yeah.
And so even though I think there's a pretty defined valley, as we described, around like 3 to 5.
Yeah.
To me, what is good, as you said at the beginning, Tucker, is so good that the issues are noticeable, but they are not destructive, right? And I didn't want to reiterate all the stuff you said, but I love the parents' dynamics. I think that was really heartfelt. I think that was so well executed.
And there's so many good emotional moments between her and her parents, and the lines that they say. And I think one of the best moments of this show is Sheik Abdullah telling her, "Good isn't a thing you are; it's a thing you do." And like that's the moral of this show. And like I think that's a new like Uncle Ben moment of iconic superhero inspirational lines. There's so many of those in the show.
The conversation in the last episode between her and her father on the roof when she gets her name finally. So, but yes.
Yeah. So that's all I would say. I was just really impressed.
Yeah.
And your score is
8.7.
Yes. 8.7.
8.7.
That's all right.
I remember.
I'm gonna give this a 7.7. This is very close. It's neck and neck with Hawkeye for me in terms of
my top 2 Marvel shows.
Exactly. There you go. The only 2 that he's completed, by the way. By the by. But yeah, I really like a lot of this stuff. I think it dips in quality, obviously. I'm excited for a season 2. I was really having to litigate in my mind, what do I like more? Do I like Hawkeye more or do I like Ms. Marvel more? But I think Abram and I had a little conversation while Tucker was out of the room, I don't know, spanking his Hank or something like that, I don't know.
Pause of Fury.
Pause of Fury reference for everyone out there. But yeah, I think Ms. Marvel just has the heart that puts it above Hawkeye. Hawkeye has some heart as well, but I think Ms. Marvel's heart is just that little bit bigger. It's embiggened, if you will. But that'll... oh, boy. That'll average out to an 8.5 for Ms. Marvel here.
Yeah.
But we have a little bit of an issue to litigate here.
Uh-oh.
Because this is tied with, in our ranking now, The Avengers. Is Ms. Marvel better than The Avengers? I'm going to say no.
I'm going to say no.
I mean, I would say yes, but I knew that wasn't going to be very hard to litigate.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's a 2 against 1 vote here. So that means that Ms. Marvel is going to go at place number 7 on our MCU ranking, below The Avengers and above Iron Man 3.
God, what a good run there.
Yeah. But that'll do it for all of us here
Yeah.
at Backlog Banter, at the Untitled Marvel Project. The next thing that we'll be talking about is Black Panther. We'll be doing that review, and then we'll be doing some She-Hulk coverage as well. Hope you're there for that. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Maybe.